Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Something is Up. Today's conversation is one that I've been looking forward to for a long time. My guest is Eric Mitchell, whose story is at the center of the documentary Experiencer, a film that, in my opinion, is one of the most honest and important explorations of this phenomenon, especially from the human side. While a lot of the current conversations focus on government disclosure and classified programs and secret technology, there is another side of this story, the experiencer side. The people whose lives have been directly impacted, often in ways that are difficult to understand and even harder to talk about. Eric's journey began around 2013 with a series of encounters involving large orange orbs, something he describes almost like miniature suns. What followed was not just a sighting, but a complete transformation of his life. Physical effects, psychological impact, and over time, the development of abilities that he himself didn't believe were possible. Since then, Eric has worked with thousands of experiencers around the world, not just to understand the phenomenon, but to help people process and integrate experiences that can completely shake their sense of reality. For many, these encounters are overwhelming and isolating, and Eric has often been one of the very few people they could turn to. He has supported people through some of their darkest moments, and in several cases has helped prevent them from taking their own lives. But there is also another layer to his story. Eric describes how, in 2016, he was brought to a ranch together with other well-known experiencers and was told that the following year a major article would come out in the New York Times, shaping the public narrative while leaving experiencers out of it. And that raises important questions about how the current conversation about disclosure actually began and whether we are really seeing the full picture. And with that, here's my conversation with Eric Mitchell. Enjoy. Hey, Eric. Welcome. It's great to have you here on Something is Up. Thank you very much for your time.
It's a pleasure to be here, my friend. I was excited to meet you, and here we are.
So I've been following your story for a while and just finished to watch the movie again today just to prepare for this, and I have a million questions. Because, I mean, you have, I think that this year is 13 years since your first experience with, well, we call UFOs nowadays UAPs and non-human intelligences. I believe it was end of 2013, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it was the end of July. It started around there.
Okay. Yeah. It started around there. Okay. So your first, the first MUFON interview was probably towards the end of 2013, but the experience was earlier than that. Yeah.
Yes.
And so before we go we get into the main questions, I've already done a brief introduction offline for the audience, but I'd love for you to introduce yourself and tell the story basically. And I'm going to also add, of course, the links to Experiencer, the movie, which is a movie that I recommend to absolutely everybody. It's probably one of the best movie on the phenomenon or and the experiencer side of things that is not really talked about that much. It seems to be a taboo nowadays, where we only talk about governments and government plots and maneuvers, etc. But the real human stories seem to be still off limit for some reason. And so experience is a great introduction to another side of the story that we don't hear much. But so yeah, I'd love for you to introduce yourself and tell your story basically.
Yeah. It's a loaded question. But yeah, my name's Eric Mitchell. I mean, I did not believe in the subject at all. I always thought that people that talk about this kind of stuff were crazy. I grew up being taught that way. And my life was very simple. I spoke with a deep Southern drawl. I live in Arkansas, hillbilly country. And so I underwent a lot of changes. I think I was 34 years old, and I woke up standing outside of my own apartment, one-story apartment, and I was confused. I thought, well, maybe I sleptwalk out here, and my left shoulder was facing the front door, and my right shoulder was facing the dead end street, and I kind of caught an orange glow off to my side. So I turned to look, and here is a 40-foot diameter orange sphere, looked like a miniature sun just rippling. And it was very stationary, and it was anywhere maybe 50, 60 feet off the ground. So this isn't like a light in the sky. This thing's in front of me, and I remember my eyebrows just squeezing together, like, well, what is that? What could that be? So after about 20 minutes, I decided it was an optical illusion. And once the sun came up, I could take a look and laugh at myself, that kind of thing. And, I kept the door open. I brewed some coffee. I turned on the television to see if there was any kind of odd, weather phenomena or just anything. My brain just bothered me. I needed, some sort of explanation of what this was. In leaving the door open, I was able to kind of lean to the side and look out from my couch. And it was just there, until the sun came up. And as soon as first light hit, I leaned over to look out, and it was gone. It didn't even have time to leave, according to my brain. But I stayed confused about it all day. I went to work. I was pretty quiet about it. And after work, picked up dinner for the kids, came home. We do homework, Pixar film, get everybody ready for bed. And so I go out for my smoke about 9:30 that night. And I'm kind of pacing my one-story apartment, thinking about it. Wow, it must have been, ball lightning. I've heard of that before. And as I'm thinking about it, walking back and forth, this thing just kind of slowly came on. When you hit a light bulb, it comes on immediately. But this thing just went from, a baseball size all the way to 40 feet diameter again. And it started to move, flashing just slowly out and then slowly back on. It was kind of ominous, about 2 miles an hour, very slow, and made a horseshoe shape around me. And I'm having to turn as this thing, almost like a stalking behavior, And so it went very slow up over the top of my apartments. And now I'm watching it, come over the top of my apartments, and it stopped about 12, 15 feet from my face. So now it's above my door, just above my apartment. And I'm looking up at it, and it flashed twice really fast and shot away like a bullet. So I'm standing there waiting for, a sonic boom to tear my body apart. My legs locked up like a goat, like a scared goat. I couldn't move my legs. And I'm just waiting. Even the air displacement alone at those speeds is going to really take me for a ride. And I just waited until I realized nothing was going to happen, and I kind of hip walked into my apartment because I couldn't move my knees. I was just like, what the heck is this? So I came in and I grabbed my daughter's laptop, and I'm just looking for anything that this could be, a secret military project or, something like that. But all I can find was like conspiracy theories and Area 51 and, UFOs. And of course, I didn't think what I was seeing was a UFO, because in my mind it would be a silver disc, on a 1950s movie, not something like this. But the next day I was coming home, and my car was overheating. My neighbor Dan came over. We checked the hoses, and turned out to be the water pump, which is a pain in the butt, more expensive. But he started to go inside, and I knelt down to tie my shoe, and I started to feel this vibration, just very light vibration on the top of my head. And I thought, I was having the chills or something, and all of a sudden it was like going from a 1 to a million as far as volume, pressure. Uh, if you can imagine being in a rock and roll concert and you feel that vibration in your chest, if you can take that up to a million and aim it right here, that's what I felt. I mean, I went all the way to the ground. I felt my pants scooting back and forth, maybe an inch or two side to side, as if maybe there's a magnet above my head and I'm a piece of metal somehow, but it was so intense. I knew I was throwing up only because my throat would open and close for a long period of time. So that's the only way I knew I was throwing up while this was happening. Um, I pushed myself off the ground, which was really hard to do because this pressure, this magnet feeling was pushing me down. I pushed myself up and looked at the object, and it was just above my head. And it flashed twice again and shot away the opposite it did the night before, just completely gone. So I quickly realized my nose was bleeding, my left ear was bleeding, I was very dizzy. Um, Everything was blurry with my eyes. It literally burnt my eyes. I have to wear glasses now because of that night. Um, and I laid there for about 20 minutes, kind of like a scared rodent. I was looking around to see, because if that thing can move that fast, I need to be hyper vigilant. I need to be aware of my surroundings, and I need to get to my front door, for safety. Somehow I'm safe if I get to the door and lock it. That's kind of silly, thinking back, but I finally got to the door, locked the deadbolt, and I was going to throw up again. So I went into the bathroom, and I got to the toilet, and I felt that cold floor, and I just laid down. It felt so good, and I passed out. So the next morning I got up. I was covered in vomit, covered in blood, all my clothes. I got to the mirror, and my face and my skin looked like a sunburn, you know. Um, and so I was burnt. I got into the shower, turned on the water, and my clothes and all, I laid there until the hot water ran out. I was so overheated. So I put on clean clothes. I went into the kitchen, and I went to grab some cranberry juice. Us guys will drink it straight out of the bottle when the girls aren't watching. But as soon as it touched my lips, I was just pouring it all over myself. I had to get as much as possible. I had no idea I was that thirsty. But I sucked down half that bottle just doing that. But I put the bottle down. I was going to make some coffee, and I started feeling that gentle vibration on my head again. So I went over to my cabinet and I braced for impact. I didn't want to get knocked down again. And it just gently went away and I was fine. So, I went to the couch so I have something to sit down on. I don't want to get knocked down. It's so confusing because I had no idea what was going on. I was thinking about calling the government and trying to get help. I didn't want to sound like a crazy person, a single father. You don't want to report stuff like this, um, you know. Um, but I sat on the couch and I thought about that vibration feeling, and I kind of accessed it. I felt something in my brain. And you're not supposed to feel something in your brain. There's no nerve endings or anything like that. So I'm going, oh my God, what is this? I've had a stroke maybe, or maybe I have a brain tumor, or something's wrong. That thing injured my brain. It hurt me. So I'm pacing back and forth, looking at my hands, thinking, oh my God, what are the implications of, what's going on right now? And I thought at the time that my mind was racing from maybe some sort of panic attack. I've never had one before, so maybe that's why my brain is just moving so fast and picking up, little things. I'd hear a car outside and I'd start to cringe because I was still in that much fear. Um, I would just jump at the sound of anything. But that was the first 3 times this object came around to my yard, and it changed my life. It turns out that I didn't have a brain tumor. I didn't have a stroke. I was undergoing savant syndrome. So I slowly became from this uneducated redneck man to studying everything I can get my hands on, just to just to just to keep my brain quiet, And and it's been a very, very long journey since then. I did get lucky. I didn't get lucky in the beginning. I've got one of those bad MUFON investigators that just wanted to blow everything off, fill out a piece of paper, and be done with it. And so I almost didn't reach out again, but I started talking to a guy by the name of Barry Gaunt. We call him Bear. And he's been at it for 55 years, really good at what he does. And he recognized a lot of things I was saying. So he sent an investigator out almost immediately. And when she showed up, all 3 of her cameras immediately stopped working. My TV was flashing on and off. My light bulbs were going crazy. My daughter lent her camera, and that one finally worked, so she could do interviews. She was picking up high amounts of electromagnetic radiation, gamma radiation in various spots, and the exact spots I told them to look. And they're like, yeah, we've got trace elements, all over the place here. And so, they gathered witness statements, and as they're doing this object keeps coming back. And it didn't care who watched. Neighbors would hear about it, people in town would hear about it. Eventually, there were rows of cars and trucks all up and down my street and around the block because people heard about this, going on, and they wanted to see if it was real and what it was. And so it got out of control. Sorry about my audio. My cat is running back and forth like a mad woman. She wants to be on camera more than me. So yeah, that's basically the very beginning. That's how it is.
Yep. So, first of all, one thing comes to mind nowadays when you describe the encounter, which is also a very similar story from Chris Bledsoe that described almost an identical thing. He describes 2 sons in his first encounter, and then connection with these beings, etc. And so, would you call it an object? Would you call it plasma energy? How would you describe it? And if you look, if you come back now, 2026, and look back, what is it that happened? What happened to you, and why do you think that happened to you? And again, here we're going into speculations. I understand that, but your idea of what happened to you probably changed across during this time. So, where do you sit now with this understanding of what happened to you?
My lead investigator did help out a little bit with the Bledsoe case. It was 7 years before mine, and he almost immediately had me on the phone with Chris, and me and Chris talked for about 2 hours. And the internal similarities, the stuff that you can't see outside of a human being, we both very much related on that. So I know his initial case is very true, very real. In the beginning, I thought I was being tortured. I thought I was being hunted. I thought this thing was trying to kill me, and 14 years later, I look back with the knowledge I've obtained over the years. I've worked with over 3,000 experiencers in 130 different countries now. I've worked with a lot of universities and um, intelligence people, not counterintelligence, but actual, national security people, because they're concerned about this kind of thing. From what I can tell, I have a genetic preposition for this type of thing to happen. Uh, I think they call it a random nucleotide polymorphism within the epigenetic DNA. So once this sleeping DNA wakes up, it feeds into your motor function. And once this motor function capsizes, it cannot grow anymore because it never stops. It tries to reach out in other ways. The first step would be empathy. The second step would be intuitive ability, because you can't say psychic. You can't say psychic at Harvard University yet. They won't let us.
You can say here. You can say
full blown psychic. Yeah. Among other things, but the third step would be synchronicity and coincidence. You start to notice things um, that seem to be coincidence because you're using multiple points of your brain to recognize these things. Where the average person, you point it out to your best friend, and it's like, look at all those synchronicities, and they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then you could tell them, well, all these synchronicities are going to lead up to your car crash tomorrow, so just stay at home, And so the fourth and final step that we know of so far scientifically is non-locality, i.e., remote viewing, out-of-body experiences, being able to control your dreams, remote sensing, through smell. Mine's very strong with hearing, so there's a lot I can do with sound to be able to tap into psi abilities. So it took me a very long time, and I'm still learning, how to manage that part of my brain. But it's both a curse and a blessing. I've helped a lot of people. I've talked down well over 300 suicides, potential suicides all over the world, and so many different, cultures. And I've got to learn, all these different cultures and languages. And so that's been really neat and fun. But what I find over the years is there is such thing, and it will be in science someday, I can promise you that. In psychology, you're going to be able to find the medical quintessential experiencer, because in certain aspects, we're all the same, no matter what culture, microbiome, religion. It doesn't matter where we live. We all have the same attributes. It just depends on how strong, these attributes actually are. Some experiencers don't ever want to meditate. They don't want to quieten the mind. They don't want to tap into these things. And it's not socially acceptable. So people stay away from it, and they live in this cognitive dissonance where one part of the brain is fighting the other part of the brain until the day they die. And what I try to teach people is to get rid of the cognitive dissonance, which is a healthy thing to have for a while, but not forever. But you've got to learn how to work this duality where you can fit in anywhere like a chameleon, and realize that no one can fully see who you are. But you also have to feed that experience your side in order for it not to bother you all the time. So we are in times that we're going to look back on and go, wow, this is when that changed. Now, as far as the powers that be, I think it's a really strange thing that counterintelligence infiltrates ufology and says civilians are not credible witnesses, therefore don't listen to the civilians. And that's really carried on, and it's really, really carried on. And what's going on here is that we're useful for private industry, we're useful for governments, we're useful for war, and all sorts of things. I mean, I just channeled mathematics for Charles Crawford III at the University of Ohio, and now he's put the mathematics. Of course, he checked the books, the computers, he checked everything. It never pre-existed until I pulled it out of my mind, and now he's doing experiments with this math that it just looks amazing what he's doing, just amazing. So you can imagine, um, our governments and Fortune 500 companies and Lockheed Martin and, the Vril Society with Adolf Hitler. We've done this throughout the past for millennia, but I believe it belongs in the public. I don't believe it belongs in the hands of tyrants.
I completely agree with you. And I want to stay on this for a moment. So first of all, how was the transition from, okay, this incredible thing happened to me, and during the period of this cognitive dissonance, you start questioning, am I sane? Am I schizophrenic? Am I psychotic? And then you realize, no, this is real. And so now I need to start integrating into my life. And all of a sudden you do a step further and say, okay, I have this ability. Let me understand more. Let me try and use them for good. And how did you develop? So first of all, how was this passage? And then how did you learn to develop this ability? Were you still in contact? Were they teaching you? Were you channeling them? Or it was completely independent pursuit to try and hone these abilities?
It's still going on to this day. By the time everybody moved out of my neighborhood, me and the kids were the last people there. The whole block moved away, to over 20 apartments, 3 trailers. A lot of stuff happened, but my daughter got accepted to college, and I saw that as a way for me to go to Maine with her, along with my son, to make sure she's okay, financially and all that good stuff, and support her going to college. And I'll be out of this situation. I can go back to a normal life. Everything's going to be fine. We can put this into the past. September 1st, 2014, I'm on my 3rd story back deck, meeting my new neighbors, and I felt them. And so I turned around to look, and the craft was going through the park across the street, came up over the tree line, and dipped down right in front of me and the neighbors. Well, the neighbors were kicking over chairs and pushing each other, trying to get inside, the building. And the kids and I were just, mortified. My heart just fell into my stomach. I can't believe, almost 2,000 miles away, and here this thing is. So, yeah.
Is it the same plasma-looking,
Yes.
sun-looking ball? Okay.
Yes, I've dealt with a lot of objects, but it's mostly been these plasma-looking balls or triangles. I've seen triangles the size of a football field or the size of a minivan, So some of these things are huge, just huge. But yeah, I had a lot of trouble. In Maine, it gets really cold. It's a desolate place. It's not a place you want to go to look for really great jobs. You grab what you can get, kind of thing. And so I had a lot of trouble, dealing with people at work. So I would slip out. I'd make jokes to try to cover it up. I would know things and then just mention it. And people are thinking, how do you know that? How do you know these personal details about me? And I couldn't manage it. I just couldn't manage it, and so a lot happened in that chapter, but I ended up getting really bad sick. I was living with Travis Walton and Audrey Hewins at the time. I introduced them to, and they fell in love almost immediately. And so that kind of made me sick, but I'm over it now. But my lead investigator, of course, he, over a year and a half time, we would speak every day, to help me through all these things. And while I was doing that, I was helping other experiencers with what I learned from Bear, and what I learned on my own as well. So he noticed that I was not able to manage my life anymore that way. And he said, Eric, I need you to come to Kentucky. There's a location there, and I've got friends of mine that are highly talented, and we are going to train you how to do this, you know? And I think his expectations were a little bit high, but I don't think he expected everything that came out in that year and a half. But I learned very well from, you know, Angelia Shear. She was the state director of Kentucky MUFON. Awesome lady. We've lost her since, but you know, she was teaching me about the Monroe Institute, vibrations, frequencies, psi abilities. Guess what's in the box? Now tell us what's in California on this block over here. You know, just get stronger and better every single time. And they, the team was really excited. I stayed exhausted, you know, because I get up really early in the morning, had no idea where were you going to go or where we're going to be. You know, he just always expected me to be ready for anything. He said, you know, he always told me, he said, Eric, you got one hell of a UFO problem, but you're about to have a big person problem. You know, people are nasty when it comes to the subject. And I think if he didn't hide me, if he didn't protect me, if he didn't teach me before people learned about me, then I would have just been mowed over by ufology and all the haters and trolls and all these people that really don't understand anything about this subject. But so he definitely had me ready before I grabbed a microphone.
Understood. And to go into the mechanic of this, what was the training like, and how did you started experiencing the different abilities, the different clairs? You almost talk about telepathy, clairaudience, clairvoyance. So quite a few of the psychic senses seem to have turned on and are very acute. How were you experiencing that? And is there a protocol that you followed, a series of exercises? They were trying to train you specific things. Sorry, it's the engineer in me that wants to understand the mechanics of stuff.
Oh, you're gonna make me give away secrets today, huh?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to follow this protocol, so yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. As a scientist, I think you would be pretty happy. I think what we would know, each Night Stalker that was training me had a different gift, you know, a different tool. You know, like Angelia Shear, she wanted to teach me all about the Monroe practices, which were excellent. They helped me a lot. The tones helped, so that was great. Um, we had another lady that would always ask me to guess what's in her pocket or guess what's on the card. You know, we just start off small, and then it gets up to bears training. Nobody wants bears training. God, 3 o'clock in the morning, we'd get out. We'd go to a museum, a place called Octagon Hall. It's probably one of the strangest places I've ever been. And I've been out to Skinwalker Ranch and done assessments and stuff like that out there. Octagon Hall is way worse than Skinwalker Ranch. Yeah, I'm surprised that that place is not all over TV, but it's a hidden gem. It's a bit of a secret, but they would all meet out there. I would lay down on a couch and get as deep as I could into meditation. Now, for your viewers out here, please do not do this at home, okay? But I'd get deep into, gosh, I'd never talked about this on radio before, but I would get deep into meditation, and they would gently help me up, help me stand up. So now I'm deep in meditation, but I feel the floor with my feet. I can feel my friends grabbing my arms, and I know they're going to take me to the motorcycle outside. And yes, this is as bad as it sounds like it's going to be. So I'd get on the motorcycle, and in that deep state, they want me to initiate contact. So these things are flown by consciousness itself. There's some sort of electromagnetic field that's related to the same as your brain, or the same as consciousness, or related to consciousness, which sounds crazy, but if an EEG can read the electromagnetic field coming off my brain and transfer what those thoughts mean, you can thought actuate all electronics. That's going to be in our future, right around the corner.
Yeah, absolutely.
So initially, what I'm doing is this motorcycle is my motor function. Okay, so how's the best way to explain this, because it could be misconstrued. What I was doing and training my brain to do was association while disassociating at the same time. And while you do that, it seems like you're slipping into a dreamlike state. You're in two worlds. You're deep in meditation, but you're also highly focused on what you're doing in front of you at the same time. Now, this muscle, this practice, takes a very long time to get your body used to that. But once you can disassociate while associating at the same time, you can make contact and chase the object at the same time. So I would initiate contact. As soon as I would turn the key, everyone would know that I was about to take off, and I would chase these objects. I remember, I think...
With your consciousness?
Yes, but physically on a motorcycle.
Physically on a motorcycle. So you would be driving, following these objects while in a deep meditation state at the same time.
Yes. And it takes a while. It's like doing two things at the same time. A lot of people with a deep ability of psi feel like they slip into a dreamlike state. And what they're doing is disassociating into a different portion of their brain while they're associating at the same time with the prefrontal cortex. So if you can balance those two at the same time and practice that a lot, that's what Skywatcher is doing. That's exactly.
That's what I was about to say. That's what Psionic is all about these days, right? And the summoning, the Skywatcher practices.
Yes.
Have you been involved with them? Have they involved you in those activities to call in?
Yeah, I was contacted by a couple gentlemen from National Security. I was told to be sure to stay on the phone during the whole conversation. They wanted to learn all the information that I had. The first conversation was 7 hours long, but they were very impressed about what I knew. And then they introduced me to Alex Kuklos, the owner, and we ended up chatting back and forth. He introduced me to some of the Psionics team. And so I did a little consulting here and there, not a paying gig or anything, but help out the best way I can, especially with, people like Jordan that were, having personal problems and experiencer problems at the same time, so you throw that wisdom in there and good direction and all that stuff. But at the time I was, my brain was flushed with cortisol, tired from the surgery, lost so much weight. And I told Alex, I said, it's not going to be fair for me to fly out there right now. Let me get better, get back in the gym, put on some weight, flush the cortisol, get the brain 100%, and I'll give you a shot when I'm ready. And he said, I'll be waiting. So yeah, I mean, that's still on the table, but I've got to concentrate. For the first time in my life, I'm going to concentrate on myself instead of trying to help everybody else. And that's the thing. The first portion of the experiencer brain is operational by empathy alone. So you're not going to see evil experiencers running around all over the place. That's not how we're built. We're built out of a sense of empathy. We love cats. We love nature. We love animals.
I had the luck to interview Jake Barber in Italy a few months ago, and every time that he recounts his own encounter, tears come up, come down actually, and it's incredible. I mean, you can see how deep was the connection and the impact of that encounter that he described with the entity that he described as a divine feminine type of consciousness.
Yes.
And I mean, in the last 13 years, you went through quite a few ups and downs, let's say, quite a trip in terms of government involvement of a negative side. And now, hopefully, you're on the other side of that. It seems that after your experience and after 2014, at least this is what you guys were saying also in the movie, a lot of the Men in Black type of experiences started to diminish, but everything started quite heavy for you in terms of military involvement, intelligence involvement, following you, tapping your car, coming into your house, putting devices into your house, and try to understand everything that they could. What is your idea of what's going on right now? Is it, like many people suspect, a war of factions inside the intelligence community to control the narrative, but also to control the information that need to come out? There has been a shift, maybe 2012, 2016, of power. How do you see it?
There was a intelligence officer. We'll call him Bob because that really is his first name, and he was our smoking man at the time. And he would give us a call when things would move, so we could take a look, pay attention to the right thing. Most people like what's popular today and they just follow it. But when you live this, you learn to look at the moving parts and act accordingly, and you have to act. It's your life, But he got the Allagash twins from the 1972 abduction, Travis Walton, Audrey Hewins, the biggest cases in American history, all out to one ranch. Chris Bledsoe was invited. He couldn't show up for some reason. But in 2016, we had a meeting where he says, there's going to be a release in the New York Times next year, and they're going to leave experiencers out. He said, the reason why I called you all here is to let you know that you're the only people that can do anything about this. So you imagine hearing that, and so he felt very strongly about that. At the time, I was talking to a scientist called, his name was Joseph Firmage, and he's a scientist. He had a UFO experience, walked away from Silicon Valley and decided to build a lab in Utah and figure out how UFOs work. Well, he was under oversight with the CIA, and they were going to make him popular and then release him as the head of INTERNASA, International Academy of Science and Arts. Well, they couldn't make him popular, and they had a problem with that. So what they did was they noticed a guy by the name of Tom DeLonge, a rock star, who was already popular, was snooping around UFO stuff.
Yep.
So they decided they were going to get rid of Joe, undermine and take his technology, and then do To the Stars Academy with Tom DeLonge. So maybe that, but Joe wouldn't give up his secrets when it came to the technology. So he ended up going to jail. So and he just got out, believe it or not. If you look him up, there's just nothing but terrible things about him online, but he's really not a bad guy. But yeah, sure enough, October 2017, it went off just like Bob said. But like we talked about before, I mean, there's facilities in like Chihuahua, Mexico, Da Nang City in Indonesia, where people like myself are taken in, trained. You go to certain levels, and it gets to the point where you're in a hospital bed. You're completely drugged on whatever perfect pill they can give you, maybe LSD with 2 glasses of wine and a joint, whatever makes your brain go into ZPC, 0 point consciousness, where, people call that the Akashic records. These facilities, they're kind of all over the world. And if you're identified early on, a lot of times during the GATE process or the gifted and talented program, mostly in America or Great Britain, You'll find these programs where they, take these kids out of class. They do other things like psychic tests and things of that nature. But eventually you end up in Da Nang City, Chihuahua, Mexico, or, any other facility. So basically you train there and you go through different levels. And eventually you get to a graduation level where they literally give you alcohol, drugs, different herbs, all sorts of different things to get your mind into ZPC, 0 point consciousness. And once they know how to maintain you there through substances, they will have a team of doctors keeping you alive while they keep you in this state of consciousness of what you might call Akashic records, where they can almost ask you any question and get information just out of the blue, straight through you. Now, if you do manage to survive and you do manage to graduate, you can go to work for an oil sheik, or you can go to work for a king. You can go to work for aerospace divisions, universities, maybe a billionaire, that just wants to have someone around. If you look at kings of the past, you'll see they always had that mystic in the background. Always, always, always had that one person. Adolf Hitler had the Vril Society. Even if you look at the Egyptian Book of the Dead, they found a family bloodline in which you torture them long enough and their motor function achieves enough activity where they can talk to Uman Ra and call Ra down from the sky, a god. So it's all throughout history. If you look at Native Americans here in America, they always have a medicine man, and he always knew things he wasn't supposed to know, and figure things out. So that's how that system works. And, I'm just one out of many that, believe this belongs in our society and not squandered by, a sociopathic control system.
I couldn't agree more. There's so much to unpack here, and I mean, I stay 10 hours talking to you right now, to be honest, right now, even because of my own experiences. But if we go back, you went from being surveilled to being told, okay, disclosure is happening, and it's a whatever they meant with disclosure. And again, still not clear what it is. Still not clear what the agenda behind it is. It's not clear what the narrative is going to be. Threat, not threat, etc., etc. It seems that at a point they wanted experiencers to be the face of disclosure. Bledsoe also talks about, they told me that my family was going to be the face of disclosure, but I wouldn't accept to go through the TTSA idea of making a movie with reptilians and dark entities and turning everything into a threat. So they put me aside. All of a sudden, I was not the face of disclosure anymore. And so now there's something else going on. But we also went through another side of the intelligence community, which is they started studying you. They started studying your brain. They started trying to understand how your brain function. And that is the part of Garry Nolan that you spoke about. How all that came about, and do you see this thing? Do you see a friction between the different experiences that you had? Do you see as different factions that engage with you and try to push you on different sides?
Yeah, my daughter was trying to be helpful back in 2013. So she brought home some movies that might be, in light, bring light to the subject. And so she did bring home the movie Sirius. So I saw this doctor that was actually willing to take a look at this little Anaconda being, right? So I thought, Well, this guy's open-minded. He's a great scientist. I checked him out, and I thought, well, I'm gonna email him and let him know what's going on with me. And Bear, my lead investigator, taught me how to stay away from counterintelligence, how to sniff out counterintelligence, and how to stay away from them. You don't want them in your home. You don't want them calling shots in your life. You don't want them to make you think you're some sort of messiah or special person. It's literally love bombing, so someone can control your thoughts and your feelings about your own self later on in life. And so these are tactics that you really want to stay away from. But I noticed counterintelligence not directly around Dr. Garry Nolan, but close enough for me to back away. And so we exchanged information. In some time past, I was contacted by a neurologist at Harvard University. He was very curious. We had a series of conversations, and I finally told him, you know what? If you want to be more involved, contact Dr. Garry Nolan. Here's his email, and tell him you're willing to offer him anything, for help. Well, at the time, Garry Nolan, he's a great guy. He's also an experiencer. And on top of that, he has to pay the bills. A scientist doesn't get to study what they want to study. A scientist gets to study where the money's at. And the money was with Havana syndrome. It was not with the brain anomaly with experiencers as well. And the Tesla machines, high contrast, level 4, was the only machines that were picking up this brain activity. All the other machines, when you look at it, it looks like white, dead brain matter moving on. It could be the beginning of MS. It could have been a stroke. It could have been, just wear and tear on the brain, So it's been overlooked since we've had science, but now we have the machines to look at it. So Garry didn't want us all to just be thrown in the junk bin. He knew something was there. So once my guy got with Garry, he always talks about his side project at Harvard. That's what that is. And so I found myself in a situation where the information was going from Stanford University to Harvard University to my living room. And of course, I would give feedback back up the pipeline with the information I'm getting on the ground, with working with experiencers all over the world. So it became kind of a network of information on what is a medical quintessential experiencer. And so and the rest is history. I mean, I got with Dr. Edgar Mitchell and Ray Hernandez back in 2014. Ray had contacted me because his life was falling apart. He had experiences in his home, outside of his home. Nobody would listen to him. He knew he sounded like a crazy person. And I said, Ray, that's what I do. That's what I do. I got you, man. And he was just so immersed in what I now call the mashed potato mountain syndrome, where he just forgot about his job, forgot about his wife and family, and he was hyper focused on finding out the truth, what's going on here. So one night, Dr. Edgar Mitchell, myself, and Ray were on the phone, and we decided, let's just get this into academics. Ufology is more of a entertaining field. Academics really need to be a part of this. And I had already been on stage several times feeling like a circus act, and it didn't feel right. The pain I went through, the pain my children went through. I mean, we went through a lot just to end up as a circus act. It's no way. So I'm in. Edgar Mitchell was in as well. So their job was to get 20 PhDs that are willing to look at the subject, and my job was to get my clients from all over the world to do the survey. So we pulled it off. It turned out to be a 980-page book called Contact Modalities, and that was enough scientific data to start approaching other PhDs with this. So since I already had my foot in the door at Harvard University, I decided to entice everyone I could with, the data. And you're a scientist. Prove me wrong. Just prove me wrong. And the more they got hooked, the more they wanted data. And I said, well, get with this guy. He knows, people at Stanford, and you can get in the loop, the secret club. Well, everybody wants in the secret club, no matter what it is. It's a secret club. So it was great to see my email chain just add more people and more people and more people over the past 10 years of, a lot of these scientists don't want to go public and talk about it, but they are working so many different angles. Shout out to Dr. Jim Segala. He invented a box you can put in your home, hook it up to your internet, and it's got 300 sensors, electromagnetic field, barometric pressure readings. I mean, so much data flows through these things. So we put them in experiencers' homes, and experiencers just write down timestamps, and then they turn it into Dr. Jim Segala. And if you're an experiencer out there, I recommend it. It's called MUPOS. It's highly safe. It goes under your HEPA laws, so your information isn't being shared. There's no audio or visual, so you're not being spied on. They just want to get the data and find out what's going on. And so the data that's coming through there, I just spoke with him 2 weeks ago. I was at a conference where he spoke in Dolores Cannon's conference, and we had a long conversation about that. And it's just incredible data. So, just when you think no scientist is ever going to figure this out, you're wrong. They're all over it, in so many different angles too, so it's just incredible. But I have high hopes that one day this will be accepted into psychology, integrated into our society. And I think, we can get the most out of people like myself from an early age, where we can develop properly and not feel so different our whole lives, and that's something we just really have to do. And not to mention its benefits are just unimaginable, really. I know some autism kids, they can do just the most amazing things, and we just call them autism kids. It's just not, of course I don't have autism, but they're drawn to me like a fly to rotting food, but God love them.
Let's take I want to take a different. I want to take a turn right now, and try to explore an angle that, to be honest, in the ufology space, everybody tries to avoid, because it seems that in ufology you're only legit if you speak about what governments are hiding or not hiding, etc. But when you start looking at this seriously, you cannot avoid to look at psychic abilities and the psychic connection with the phenomenon. And then you go down the rabbit holes of, okay, we've had channelers for 40, 50, 60, 70 years telling us the same things, giving names to these entities, describing in a very consistent way the experiences and the information, and etc. And of course, I agree that it's difficult to know for sure whether their information is legit, is completely valid, or not, and what is the layer of human interpretation on top of the messages that a psychic person receives, etc. But from your point of view, now 10, 12 years with this, living with this phenomenon and with this connection, studying everything that you studied, what is it that you think we are facing, we are experiencing? How your idea of reality itself shifted? What is reality for you? What is this phenomenon? And also, I assume that you've encountered, like it happens for everybody that starts developing these abilities, a multitude of entities, energies, beings, etc. How do you give them a name? For instance, Arcturians, Syrians, Pleiadian, Greys, whatever. There are so many different names out there. What is your experience? How do you interpret this reality right now?
As far as I know, I've only with what people might call the Greys, and I'm forced to call them the Greys because that's how our society identifies these people, whoever they are. I don't know who they are. I don't know where they're from. I can't profess that there's a intergalactic, team of light worker. I don't know. I don't know any of that stuff. I hear about it, but I go with what's substantiated. And for me, it seems that there is an agenda with them when it comes to female eggs. Sperm is extracted from the males. There is a lot going on with sex organs. There is DNA samples taken. So it definitely seems like they are creating a very particular race, and I think with the experience you're having that type of brain, and in this part speculation, but if you grow up on a planet that is almost impossible to survive, your prefrontal cortex is going to be in your motor function and not in the front of your brain. So that's what they use to speak. That's what they use to communicate. That's how they are lucid all the time, and we use a different part of our brain to do that. And so the communication is so crossed, but for most of the time, it's an emotional transference. So you get that emotional transference, and what you have to do is switch that over to the analytical side of your brain so you can kind of analytically try to understand exactly what it means. But it's only from the perception that I can understand, so it's very limited. It's very small. So I try to analyze that the best I can and be honest with myself about the information, that's coming through. You can feel it coming off of other human beings, and that's much more familiar. When you walk up to a woman in a grocery store and say, "Ma'am, he's not going to stop hitting you. Will you please come with me to the police station?" And then I get in trouble because nobody knows who the hell I am, and I know everything in the world about this female, so it gets difficult. But my worldview completely changed, absolutely completely changed. I mean, I think for the most part, and I think, a lot of people would get upset with me saying this, but, we live in a mainly physioglant society. It's physioglant. We are nature. We are what the universe is doing. And somehow we turned it into a strip mall. And the only way to get ahead in this world is fake little pieces of paper. And, you walk around and these little pieces of paper make you feel important. I'm almost reminded of, penguins when they give each other stones, for mating rituals or something like that. Another way to look at it is if you trade $100 bill for some paper in Africa, and you look at this red paper with white trimming, and you're like, this means nothing to me, but it means everything to people in Africa. So we're just, we're playing this game, and I live in America where you've got the 350 million most richest people on the planet. So we're constantly having our consciousness attacked by commercials and t-shirts, and everything we look at is a sales pitch from the time we spend to earn these special pieces of paper. So when it comes to sports or entertainment or anything like that, I don't want to buy into the Roman Colosseum of things, but live my life in a more organic fashion. And I'd rather stay in that place because when I look around, it seems like everyone has gone insane, but I'm supposed to be the crazy person.
No, I completely understand. But you've also been exposed to things that the majority of people are not exposed to. For instance, when you say this thing went from being a tennis ball to a 30, 40 foot almost sun in front of me, and that shut down at incredible speed. So first of all, on a physics level, was this thing coming in from a different dimension? Was this thing coming to a visible spectrum of light based on your thing? I mean, reality itself is not what it seems. I mean, you get to the point that you accept, okay, there's way more to reality than what I have been told, right? And now you are communicated to beings in ways that most people can't.
I did ask them once, and actually got an answer. Answers are hard to get. They said every electron is the same electron, so you can always be anywhere at any given time. Uh, Now, I don't know anything about physics. It still doesn't make sense to me, but if I were to interpret that, I would say interdimensional. And I've also seen them absolutely disappear from the sky and reappear, maybe 30, 40 miles, away. So they're able to do that. Yeah.
Mm. And are you still in contact with them? Do they still communicate with you?
hmm Of course, of course. I do meditate often. Sometimes I'm not trying to contact or anything. I'm just trying to be good to my brain. And I get this. It used to be subtle. It used to be a subtle feeling where in 2013 I would be watching TV with the kids or cooking dinner or just be right in the middle of something, but I'd feel like I need to go outside. And the moment I go outside, I knew exactly where to look. And everybody that's seen a UFO, they say, I just thought to look up and it was there. No, you didn't. There's this subtlety. And if you learn how to practice that, it gets stronger and it turns into communication. But usually the object shows up. I don't know why my case is different or why Chris Bledsoe Sr.'s case is this way as well. But we seem to be two of the very few people out there where these objects do not care. They will show up in your yard. They don't care who's watching. It's not covert. I lived in Vegas for 2 years, and my gosh, there were so many people. I thought if I moved to Vegas, I mean, I'll be surrounded by millions of people, and these things won't happen. No, it definitely kept happening, in Vegas. So that makes me really curious because most experiencers, it's very covert. It's not out in the open. Uh, why have it out in the open with just a few people out there? It's a very
Yeah.
curious thing. But I wish I
Well,
can tell you I was smarter, that I could have all
you
this
are
stuff figured out.
you are extremely smart, but I understand that. And I mean, to be honest, I'm not expecting anybody to know exactly what this is because I think that we are not uh, able to understand. Or, I mean, we're talking about probably intelligences that are extremely more advanced than us. We can
Mhm.
only, I mean, let me put it like this. I believe that there are people in this world that knows way more than they let on. I believe there are governments have at least hypotheses that are sound. Maybe they don't know everything about it, but I think they know more than us. I don't subscribe to the idea that the phenomenon is singular, is one thing. I think the universe is gigantic and we're facing a variety of interactions with different phenomena. Um, but for instance, coming back to your specific experience, when we talk about the experience that is similar to the one of Chris Bledsoe, and so the orbs type of experiences, he uh, the way he described the beings as beings of light, the orbs themselves turn into beings, and the lady with the name Hathor. And in ufology, there is a species of Hathor's beings, which are these light beings. Did you have experience with the light beings? Because you said I've only experienced the grays, but you also experienced the orbs. Did you also have
They're baseball to softball sized blue orbs. There'll be um, sometimes two or three floating around the home, and there'll be a big flash of blue light, and the next thing you know, these things will be standing there in front of you. So it
and what do they look like?
for me, it was just like three-dimensional shadow beings. They look like grays. The silhouette looks like grays. You've got two that are maybe 4 foot tall and one that's around 7 feet tall, according to my door jamb. And so, yeah, as crazy as that sounds, yes, that does happen, and I've heard people like Hal Puthoff talk about that. Don't be around these orbs too much. There's a high possibility for, getting cancer. There's been effects like that. But there's
Do you
been a
think
few.
that your cancer was also potentially due to something like this?
And my doctor
Have you
said
worked
it,
on that?
yeah, my doctor said it was a possibility that could have happened from, electromagnetic radiation. So it would be the type of cancer to get from that. The rest of my colon was that of a 25-year-old man, instead of 47, so he was happy about that, but then there was the cancer as well. But no, there has been times where in regression, I'm standing face to face with these beings, talking with them. Um, Frightened, of course, confused, but still having conversations. Um, there's been a few occasions where I've been wide awake and face to face with these things, where they'll just seem to disappear right in front of you, and that sounds like delusions. That sounds like something's wrong with me. But I can sit on any lie detector test and tell you I have been face to face. There was one morning, the night before, I was working with someone that was highly suicidal, and got him to sleep. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. I had just moved, so all I had was a bed and a dresser in my bedroom. Now there's no curtains yet. There's no blinds. I haven't put anything over the window yet. So the next day I was going to go shopping and get all those things. So I woke up about 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, and I pulled my knees up. I put my back up against the bedboard, and the first thing I need to do is check to see if this suicidal person is awake, has reached out while I was sleeping, and then go through all the other messages from, experiencers that, all over the world. I've got a long list in the morning sometimes, in the corner of my eye, and nothing should be moving at the corner of my eye. There's nothing there but a wall. And the sun had come up where the whole room was lit. It was completely lit. There's no shadows. It's not dark in there at all. It's daytime. And I turned to see what it was. And this, all I can say is gray. It's more muscular than I thought they would be, but not big muscular, just small, but cut everywhere. No fat that I can see whatsoever. It had its left shoulder facing me and had its hand open, and it looked like it was looking at some sort of device in its hand. And it had no idea that I had sat up and I was awake and I was staring at it. And it slowly turned its head and looked at me, took a step back, and just vanished right in front of me. So they do that. I don't know. It could be cloaking technology. That thing could have still been in my room. It could have been something more exotic, that it could just disappear and reappear somewhere else. That just blows my mind. And I get so angry, because that happened. I was wide awake. There wasn't sleep paralysis, it wasn't anything like that. I was wide awake. And, in dream state, your brain can't read numbers and letters. I was reading messages, that whole time when that thing was standing right next to me, until I noticed it. So, I didn't go back to bed, obviously I didn't go back to bed for quite a while, because it's hard to go to sleep when things like that are going on. But, yeah, I hate even saying those things, but I promised myself to be honest about this whole thing. The pain I've been through is not worth lying, about any of that stuff. But I have seen them, wide awake. They do exist. They are real.
Yeah. No, look, I absolutely believe you. No questioning at all. I think this is a part of the phenomenon. So what do you you talked about the agenda of the Greys, which seems to be connected to maybe survival of the species. A lot of people talk about um, the crossbreeding, etc. But they are not the only one in contact with humanity at this time, I believe.
Mhm.
What do you think is the end game right now from the Greys, from ETs, NHIs connecting with us, and from a government perspective and disclosure? Where are we going with this?
I I think a lot of people have a very easy misconception about what disclosure is. You know, a sitting president standing behind a podium and announcing we're not alone. But it's, I think it's way more complicated than that. Disclosure is a very personal thing, and every single person will undergo a very personal um, disclosure. You know, you and I both like pizza, but it doesn't taste exactly the same in your mouth than it does mine. So a personal disclosure is real disclosure. It's true disclosure. It's the rabbit hole that you're going to eventually have to go down in order to fit into your new worldview. You know, it's got to match up right. You know, for you to be okay. You know, so if you can imagine a quilt with all the squares on it, and that's your worldview. And then something comes along and tears all the squares out, and you don't know what order to put it back together because you got to go to work in 10 minutes. You don't know how to put this worldview quilt back together. So you just throw some duct tape on it and run to work, you know. And so that happens to a lot of people. But I think, you know, in these times, it's more and more prevalent, and there's no way to put the toothpaste, you know, back in the bottle. So the only Hail Mary they can probably do is just to, you know, number one, keep experiencers in check, which they're good at. And, you know, number two, control that narrative to whatever they want. I mean, give that disclosure flavor to the masses, you know, so that's their Hail Mary into this. And it's going to be counterintelligence. It's going to be the biggest buck, you know, the most powerful people once again, and we're going to have it their way, you know, for now. And it's upsetting, but that's the type of slavery we live in this world. You know, a lot of people walk around and they like to go in shops and they like to buy stuff and they like to be entertained and play video games and all those things. And, you know, we work overtime for our distractions. That's how bad it's gotten. So, whatever our owners decide is going to be their disclosure, and we're going to be bottle fed that stuff. But I think as humanity, we're we're smart enough not to go along with that. We're smart enough to take our own opinions, um, and you know, take the data and make our own personal opinion. That's what we should be doing. But there's a lot of people out there, and you can see that in America nowadays with you know, the political turmoil, that a lot of people don't do their own research. They just get angry at what they're supposed to be angry about. You know, so it's a terrible thing. You know, so we do have those particular people that are going to go along with the narrative no matter what. But critical thinking is extremely important when it comes to your overall health when going down this very particular rabbit hole. You've got to be very careful about what you believe, and don't be afraid of your own mind. You know, it's okay.
So I remember a tweet from it was posted, but I don't know. To be honest, I don't remember who posted it, and I don't even know whether it was real or manipulated. But some time ago, the screenshot of private messages on Twitter where Jake Barber was reaching out to an experiencer or um, a person in the UFO community saying that there was a plan that had started in 2012 for disclosure, and you talked about 2016 people reaching out to you already describing a plan for a New York Times articles in the New York in 2017, and that was Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, and going to Leslie Keane, Ralph Blumenthal, etc. Why do you think that process was started in 2012 or 2016 or wherever it was started? Do you think is the NHIs forcing the timeline right now? Something is happening and they're forcing governments to react. Do you think there is an agenda specific for the government to get why were you told why this process was started?
Not directly. But I know when it comes to NHI, they want it. They definitely want it. I mean, can you imagine looking at a developed species running around pretending all the time? You know, because that's what we do, and it's not good for us. We're poisoning each other with, food and all sorts of things. Our mental health is declining. Our genetic structure is being broken down. It's in disarray, and we should be in a better place as far as a species, but we're not. Um, I don't think they all have great intent, but we definitely need to change or be replaced, and that's the feeling I get from this whole thing. But I don't think Leslie Kane really was a part of anything nefarious when it came to disclosure. I think she had a great story and she ran with it. I think she told a lot of.
I don't disagree. No, I'm
Yeah.
not. It was not meant to be an accusation of sorts. It's
Oh no,
simply
no, I get it. Yeah.
stating that was the article that kicked in. I mean, that
Yeah.
changed completely the field, right? Because every time I need to explain to some people that don't know much about this, and I'm not an expert. I started following after 2017, so. But every time I need to describe it, I describe it as, okay, there is a part of this phenomenon that is, let's say, a lot of people call it biblical, ancient astronauts. Let's say that goes up to the early 1900s, and I'm not an expert on that, and so I'm not going to debate that part. There is a part of the story that is early 1900s to Roswell. There is Roswell to 2017, and then there is post 2017, right? And the post 2017 world for ufology is very different, and it seems to be the light coming in. But again, what narrative has been pushed, and how much counterintelligence is through this narrative? And so I was wondering whether or not you have an idea what the narrative is that eventually they're trying to push, and why.
I don't know what the narrative is going to be. I don't think it's out yet. I think the guardrails were put up, or the blinders, if you will. That way, nobody looks that direction or that direction. Let's just look what we're doing here. I don't know what it is, but I definitely know that it's only going to be in for the best interest of whoever puts this narrative together. Unfortunately, I mean, that's how we all live our lives, under everything there is. Our belief systems, our religions, our schooling. I mean, they're still saying we came from monkeys and the Big Bang Theory actually happened. So we definitely know both of those things are not real, but we push those on children. I find that very unfortunate, but that's where we're at. They're misanthropic sociopaths always have to have power, more power and more power. They're a creature like that. Like a cat acts out being a cat, a dog acts out being a dog. So now we have these clowns that we've got to deal with, and they're always in a position of power because they're just built that way. And we've got to stop doing that. We've got to stop electing insane people and really do a better job, especially with politics and how we do things. But I do love the experiment of the Constitution of the United States, but I do think that we could do a better job under it. And I'm just rambling at this point, but
No, I
so
ramble about this all the time, so don't worry. You're
yeah, so
going through another door.
yeah, it's the stuff I think about a lot. I have a lot of thought experiments when it comes to this, and you know, I'm like you. I'm not naive, thinking that I'm going to be able to achieve all the answers, but I definitely have gone after the medical answers, and not just answers for myself, but suffering people that don't want to live in this world anymore. They don't,
Yeah,
and I've talked down over 300 people from suicide.
yeah,
Just last one was the night before last, and it's constant. And a little daydream I have is that we can somehow create a facility where people can come to a wellness center, learn about all these things, also be looked at while learning all these things so we can add more to the table. I think the government should fund it. I've worked hard my entire life and I paid them a lot of money, not to ever do. For me, So um, sitting down with Steve Bassett, a couple of other friends you might know, Dr. Jim Segala, we all kind of meshed our brains together about 2 weeks ago. Beautiful day, sat outside, and with all of our data combined, it looks like you'd be looking at 100 million experiencers in America. 100 million out of 350 million. So if you crunch the numbers, worldwide, you're looking at a lot more people than anyone would ever imagine. I mean, ever imagine. But we're so hidden. There's people that never tell their spouses. They can share everything else, but they never tell their spouse. They do call me though. you know, because I do understand. I know what's going on. I've got a client in California. He said for my 50th wedding anniversary, I'm going to tell my wife. And he was so scared that she would divorce him or think he's crazy. 50 years. You think about it. Your first date, you're holding a fart in the entire time. You can get the sweats and everything. You just got to hold that fart in the whole time. 2 years after marriage, your dirty clothes strung all over the place. You don't care anymore. But 50 years to tell your wife you're an experiencer. And he was so scared, and he finally did it. And she said, I thought it might be something like that, and he was so mad. He was like, no, get mad at me, be upset with me, call me crazy. She goes, no, I've known you for 50 years, I looked
yeah.
it up. So yeah, this whole game that we're playing, it is a fraudulent game, and people like me exist. And my gosh, what if animals do too? What if,
Yeah.
You look at the monarch butterfly, the first, second, and third generation, they, you know, build cocoons, they come out as butterflies, they eat, they mate, they pass on more butterflies, and then they eventually die, and that's the life cycle. The fourth generation has a random nucleotide polymorphism within its DNA that wakes up in the fourth generation, and they have a strong enough electromagnetic field detector in their brain. They fly south to Mexico for the winter. So, and that working model is how you find the experiencer DNA, except it's not first through fourth generation with experiencers. It's random, and it seems to be triggered by trauma,
Yeah.
And so if you,
Do you think yours was activated by the encounter, by the being,
yes,
by the beam of light that put you on the ground?
it it wouldn't be a too big of an assumption because but it seems like they caught some interest in me. It seems to just be abrupt, without warning or without much warning, and my gosh,
Did you become more spiritual since this happened? Did you?
yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I got into meditation. Not too much woo-woo stuff, but I've got a pretty good woo-woo on me. I like facts. I like data. I like hard evidence, but there is this aspect of consciousness um, without limitation, you know. And that's what we do. We run around and worship our limitations 6 days a week, and then we, on the seventh day, we worship a deity outside of ourselves. So it's kind of funny how we act, but yeah, highly spiritual. You know, after that, in which before I wasn't even close. You know, I believe in God. I went to church, Christian, all that sort of thing. But it broadened my sense of reality when it came to that. You know, that what you're doing in the here and now is exactly what the universe is doing. You know, we believe we're separate from it, but we are it. You know, when you look at the night sky, you can tell yourself, yes, that is me. You know, you're a wave. You're
Yeah,
something the whole ocean is doing in the here and now, representing the entire thing. You know, if that makes sense. But
it
yeah,
does.
definitely philosophy. Anything that can help me try to articulate to myself or understand how to get by, how to take on this new sense of reality, since I couldn't beat it off of myself with a stick. I mean, man, I fought it every step of the way.
Um, the question that I was about to ask you earlier was, you've been helping people at the worst time of their lives, basically due to this experience. But even from what you described in the movie Experiencer, there seems to be an arc between sometimes the very traumatic experiences at the beginning, especially for women, but then a perception of actually this was for the best. Actually, this was something that changed my life for the better. And people start seeing things and becoming more hopeful, etc., etc. Is this something that you could say is a very common evolution, very common dynamic? Was this for you? How has your perception of this traumatic experience evolved over time?
I, I suffer, you know, I do. I suffer at times, but looking back, would I have chose a different path? No, no. I mean, it's scary. It's so many things, but at the same time, it's very curious. You know, it's a very interesting life to go from something so simple, so predictable to I don't even know if I'm going to be on a plane later on today, you know. It is exciting life. Sometimes I wish I had the simple life back. You know, I moved back home to Arkansas and lived very simply. You know, I don't like to like run out and buy things all the time to fill some sort of hole in my heart. Um, so, you know, minimalist, I guess you would say. Um, but yeah, it is a process. And, you know, I tell other experiencers, you know, it's going to get better in time. You know, it's always going to be there. You're always going to have the cognitive dissonance. You know, am I crazy? What's wrong with me? All those things. And those are healthy things to have. They really are. It's the people that don't question that are typically the insane, you know, and normally that would be schizophrenia. Of course, you can be schizophrenic and still be an experiencer. I've tested that, and it's blown my mind. A lot of people that attach themselves to this type of subject, you know, in falsehood of being an experiencer would be um, borderlines. Borderlines try to attach themselves to a genre because they have no identity, self identity of their own. So they wander into this not knowing that they're going to be detected immediately because there's a certain way about all of us that you can't deny, and that's something that needs to be in academia. But I think it's going to take some time, some real observation when it comes to this. But if you trigger a sleeping gene to inhibit self protection, so mom pops pills all day in the bed, dad's miserable about everything, so he drinks all the time, and you don't know if he's going to come home and beat you. You don't know if he's going to come home and yell at you. You're not sure if mom's going to feed you today. You develop your motor function in a very particular fashion. It capsizes with activity because your whole life is based on self protection now. This type of trauma tells your brain, tells your DNA to wake up, um, put full function into your self protection areas, and it heightens your senses. It heightens all those senses. So now that I've developed empathy, when my father comes home and he's angry and drunk, I can feel whether I'm in danger or not. I can feel his emotions emanating off of him like a hot road on a summer day. You can almost see the mirage coming out of them, and so that's self protection. Now I can develop intuitive ability. Now before Dad ever gets home, I can feel through intuitive ability and through empathy whether I'm going to be in danger. And now I've developed synchronicity and coincidence. So therefore, I can see things leading up to a certain point before anybody else can see. So that's safety as well. And on top of everything else, now you can remote view locations. You can remote view through space and time to see things far away that could lead up to your own harm. So it's, if you put it that way, it seems almost natural and not supernatural. For the scientific non-woo-woo thinking. But we're wired that way. Who built us? Why are we wired that way? I mean, if you look at genome 2, the telomeres are capped off. Who did that? I mean, who did that? I mean, anyone could look that up and see that it was done. So what makes, you can own 20 cats, and I've known people that have. Um, the quintessential cat is going to act the same ways all the time. They may have their little personalities about them that make them different, but you can agree they're all cats through their behavior, not just their physiology, but behaving like a cat. Any animal, so humans behave like humans because we're wired to be that way. Well, why are some of us hardwired, maybe throughout generations of pain and struggling, to have the ability to open our motor function all the way and learn how to deal with this, some sort of hypervigilance? So I mean, that's the way I see it. And when I look at the science, because I've casted a wide net, Garry Nolan knows some. My guys at Harvard know some. There's guys at University of Montana Tech know some, but I know them all because I read the email chain. So from collating and looking at all the data, this is what it's showing. And it would make sense to have not just disassociation disorder, but being able to disassociate while associating is a superpower.
Do you think that we're living a time where in the spiritual community they call it, we're having a spiritual awakening? That is more and more people that are opening up these senses, and even not in a traumatic way like before. Do you see an acceleration based on your data points?
I think so. I think here in America, most of us have an illusion of spirituality. We're buying into a particular genre in order to feel and be a certain way. And I got my butt kicked by my meditation teacher. He lives in Indonesia, little fishing village. He's got the big eyebrows and everything. Very wise man, very wise, very spiritual. And he is basically the spiritual master of the entire island. And every morning they do the celebration of life and hum as the sun rises and thank the universe for giving us another day and giving us life. And funny thing is, one of his students noticed me online, and he's not going to use a smartphone, for Christ's sakes. I mean, but he finally got him on the phone with me, and he's aware of these objects. He's aware of the grays. They're in the ancient scrolls that they've had. And their verbal lineage goes back, they say 1.5 million years. And if you go to Indonesia, they'll tell you that, yeah, we passed down these things for a very long time. Now, whether that's archaeologically, true or not, I don't know. But in their ancient scrolls, they talk about these orange fiery balls that come down and do these things to people. And so Ano, we call them Ano because that's in the Asian language. So when they want to say they go ano, like that. They're thinking. So since he relinquished his name like 30 years ago, we just call him Ano, And so he gets on the phone with me and he said, I want you to quickly tell me who it was that saw these objects. I said, well, that's easy. I saw it, my daughter, my son, about 19 witnesses outside, some people from MUFON. And he said, please stop speaking. And I'm thinking, what? He said, please tell me who it was that saw these objects. I said, well, I just told you. It was me, my daughter, my son, 19 witnesses, some people from MUFON. He started laughing. He said, yes, you're definitely American. He said, you mean to tell me that you can't tell me who you are looking at those things? And it blew my mind. I'm thinking, wow, this guy asked a question that I can't possibly understand because I was born and bred right here in America, and I didn't know who I was looking at these objects. So I think that kind of kicked off a different type of ufology for me. Instead of wanting to see people's pictures and videos to identify them as an experiencer, I wanted to know who they were. And once you look inside a quintessential experiencer, you're going to see what you're looking for. It's not about lights in the sky. It's about the lights in our hearts. And once you map what an experiencer is, you start to understand so many different things, and it's just been an incredible journey. And I hope to learn more. I mean, my gosh, on top of everything else, I've been, FaceTiming over the years instead of doing phone calls. At first, I would just do phone calls, but now I'm getting cultures and facial expressions and family members and little grandmas in third world countries that are pulling their granddaughters in front of the camera saying, okay, marry now, you marry now, So, it's been a whole new adventure with FaceTime, but hopefully we can, publish all these things. But if you ever seen the show Quantum Leap, where this man steps into a quantum accelerator and he ends up jumping into different people's lives and trying to navigate and figure out what's going on. That's what my life feels like. And it's an adventure every time my phone rings, because I don't know how insane, this case is going to be, but I know it's going to be a journey. There's little Bella in the Bulacan, Bit River in, I want to say Indonesia, but it's, I can't think of the country. There's so many of them. But, they're 3'8" little Asian girl, got these fiery balls coming down from the sky. They live in the province. So the barangay is, the judge, the doctor, the lawyer, the police, the elders, the barangay, the po. They would actually decide people's punishment and all that. And they live off of each other over there. And if one is exiled, they won't survive. So they're packs, and they were talking about making little Bella leave the province and go off on her own. She, I think she was 28 years old when I met her, which is expiration date in her country. That you become an old hag if you're not married by then. And so I was working with her, and I said, well, get me on the phone with the barangay, and I'll speak with them about what's going on with you. And they thought it was evil spirits coming down from the sky. And so I talked to them about it. I said, I work in this. I work with PhDs and universities. What's going on in the sky is scary, but you have to pay attention to what's going on with little Bella, because she's more intuitive now. She can make decisions alongside the barangay that won't make sense at first, but it'll come really, really well every single time if you just trust and listen to her. So she's 30 years old now, and she's the youngest barangay member in her country. Yeah, so she's like a little Mother Teresa, just creating miracles all over the place. Whereas if we weren't in contact, she would have been exiled and probably dead by now. So that's one out of thousands of stories. I've seen murders cases, I've seen all kinds of stuff, but it's just fascinating what experiencers are capable of with a small amount of confidence. And confidence is very important, because if you keep telling yourself you're not capable of these things, you're hindering possibilities that could be miracles. I mean, just with Charles Crawford III at University of Ohio. I told him I'd work with him. He was excited. He calls me up. He said, I'm going to need mathematics on, propulsion and energy. And I'm like, Charles, I love you, buddy, but where do you think I learned how to do that? I don't know how to do that, but I stopped myself. I said, give me a week. I can't promise anything, but we'll see what we can do. Next thing I know, I'm at this whole, conference in San Francisco, and I got Jack Serfati pulling on my shirt going, this math is freaking amazing, and I'm like, it's not mine, it's not mine. I mean, Sweet Home Alabama wrote itself. If you talk to the guy that wrote the song, he said it wrote itself. He just picked up his guitar and sang and played it for the first time. Doesn't know where it came from. There's inventors that do this all the time. They don't know where it came from, just popped into my head. A lot of actors, a lot of singers, a lot of the artistic side people, have access to this type of mind. And maybe they don't know where it's coming from. It came out of nowhere. And so it does look like an awful lot of assistance from these ugly creatures out there. Yeah. It's an awful lot of assistance. So I think they're highly invested in us, whether it's to benefit them, benefit us, or mutual beneficial, either way. I mean, my son sat down next to me in the very beginning, and he said, Dad, I think these are like interstellar bees. And that has stuck with me. I think he was like 12 years old at the time, but it stuck with me this whole time. And it just still does, because when you look at all of nature, it sort of makes sense. But there's definitely an investment of our DNA and our future and our well-standing. Think about these crashes. Yeah, that's one thing. But what about gifting sites? Why are we being given technology throughout history? Throughout history, they're dropping off technology so we can understand it and move a little bit faster in our evolution, and so something's going on there.
The tragedy is that this majority of this technology has been secluded, and hopefully soon will be in the hands of humanity. I mean, that's the hope, right?
I hope so. When I was at Skinwalker Ranch doing the assessment out there, there's a piece of equipment underground that's still awake, and it's been down there since the days
one inside the mesa.
Yeah, it's inside that mesa. I went on top of the mesa. I meditated at one of the trees up there at the very top, and the first time it happened, I went from meditation, and it switched me over to remote viewing. And I'm thinking, what was that? I jumped up off the ground, and I was confused. That wasn't human. That wasn't ET. What was that? So 2 years goes by, and I think about it every single day, and I'm invited back. So this time I'm mentally, equipped. Whatever it is, I'm not going to let it freak me out. I'm not going to let it scare me.
Is it the time of OSAP, or is the time of Brendan Fugel?
Brendan Fugel. This was very, very recent, about almost 3 years ago. And so I went to the same tree. I got into meditation. This presence connected with me, and it was trying to get me to remote view again. I allowed it to happen. And I'm looking at a piece of equipment that was given, and there were Indians there. So this was a long time ago. And the tribe was very peaceful. They took very good care of the land, and they were happy that the sky gods had dropped us off. And the American government came through and dropped off 11 more tribes onto that property, secluded. You have to share this property now. It's Indian land. Well, they began to fight over the sky gods' gift, and fighting became war, and they were killing each other. So some of the elders got together and decided to bury it out there, but it's still connecting consciousness. It's still connecting.
What is it in your opinion? In your opinion,
What's that?
what is it? What does it do? You think?
I'm not really sure, but I can't tell you the shape or the size, but I can tell you it communicates through thought actuation. It reads your EEG and knows what you're thinking, and that's how you connect. That's how you pilot these things. So it very well could be a craft, but I don't want to. I don't want to go. I don't want to step over that line without knowing for sure. But I can tell you what it showed me. And throughout the years, it's been down there, and it's connecting to people. That's why when you see someone that's macho and they think they're tough and they have that sort of intent while they get around these objects, they're not going to have a good day. But if you, and I mean, that's the thing. If you bring 20 good experiencers out there to communicate with this thing, it'd be amazing. You might be able to dig it up, but it's not going to let you dig it up with ill intent. It's just not going to happen. So
that's really interesting. So it's a very different perspective from what I've heard. It will not allow you to dig it up.
It won't.
If you have ill intent. Yeah, I understand. So this is why sometimes I take. I have an issue when I hear the psionics talking about summoning. Summoning is the wrong term for me. It's not. We're not summoning anything. No. We're asking them to interact with us. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. Right.
That's right.
Summoning make you think that we are in control and we can lure them in and take control. I think they let us because they want us to evolve. They want us to experience.
Right. If they connect with me and it's 3:00 in the morning and I really want to go back to sleep, I'm not coming outside. I'm just not doing it. It works both ways. It really does. But you're not going to be able to hide your intent from these things. You can't hide anything, No. So
when you say remote view, how does he manifest? Is he clairvoyance? Do you see the actual pictures? Is it a more subtle sensation of?
I don't know what it's like for everyone else. I learned remote viewing the Indonesia way, the ancient way. Here in America, they give you coordinates. My girlfriend is really good at. She's really good at that. And for me, I get into meditation. I kind of switch over to a different, portion of my mind. And for me, it's like seeing you, but in my mind's eye, so it's a very clear picture. Just this morning, there's a witness roaming around here right now, but a friend of mine in 3 states over lost an item, couldn't find the item. And so I just did a quick blink and looked at the item, and I said, it's on the nightstand under the hat. It's on this funny looking table. And she goes, oh, that's in my bedroom. Well, I've never been in her bedroom. I don't know what her bedroom looks like, but I do now, and I found what she wanted to look for. So, I'd like to be doing bigger things than this and finding lost items, but sometimes, I help my friends out, but yeah, it's almost feels like that circus freak feeling when people approach me and say, hey, do this, hey, do that. It turns my brain off instead of on because of my dislike toward that type of behavior. But if something's really important, or if decent, caring, loving people need me to take a look at something, I'll look at it. But recently, Science Bob, he keeps sending me coordinates to look at something. Bob McGuire, great guy.
I need to talk to him as well. Yes.
I was like, Bob, that's not how it works for me. I need a picture. I need to hear someone's voice. A voice is better than their picture. I can pick up on their resonant frequency. and find them or see them that way. Things of that nature. So I think my girlfriend, she'll eventually show me how she does it with the
Yeah. The
with the
coordinates.
numbers.
Yeah, the McMonagall method. Yeah,
Hmm.
the Stargate. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time. What I'm gonna say is, I saw that your tweet about you meeting with Michael and Jesse. Have you recorded already?
Hmm. Yes,
Yep.
yes, we have. Yes,
Do
we have.
you know when it's gonna be out?
It should be pretty soon. Jesse's got a lot backed up in the hole. He's excited about our interviews, of course. So I'm sure he's just covering the ones that are current events for now. And that should be out soon. He flew out Dr. Michael Masters, myself, Heidi, and
Yeah.
Dr. Steve
Yeah.
Colburn that worked with Dr. Roger Lear because he's been checking on me over the years. I was lined up to be patient 18. We were going to meet at Dolores Cannon's conference in 2014 for the surgery. And 2 weeks before the conference, Dr. Roger Lear passed away, unfortunately. So that left Steve and I in a bit of a close relationship. I get to meet the other patients to, ask them what it's like. Love Timothy Cullen, patient 9. He's getting up there in the years and he's just so grouchy. I love it. But all great people, all suffered through quite a bit. But yeah, we got a great interview out of him with Jesse.
Yeah.
And then I think it will be me, Masters, and Heidi with the next one they'll put out. And then there's another one after that where he just wanted to interview me. And so I did show off for him a little bit. Let's just say he didn't blink for a little while. so yeah, he was impressed. So I think it'll be a great interview, and I think just like doing any of this stuff is just to reach out to other people like myself and say it's okay. You can get through this. If you can't, give me a call.
I'm looking forward to it. And there's all the other part of the story that I haven't asked about. You and Michael, I spoke to Michael briefly after the Rogan interview. And yeah, looking forward to see your interview with Jesse. But Eric, thank you very much for your time. I would stay here hours, but maybe we'll do something else another time. I am absolutely interested in understanding what's going to happen next with you, because this is
love the
super
way you
exciting.
think. Yeah, I love the way you think. I love the way you think, and I want hard questions. So yeah, definitely. Let's do this again sometime because the more angles you throw at me, the more I can explore about it myself, and the more I can hear myself say it out loud, but not just a awesome podcast, but a way to explore my own mind, so it's very, very good for me.
I understand. For me, the podcast, so I never thought I would do a podcast. It's something that came out a year or so ago, but everything for me started because in 2023, I lost my dad and one of my best friends in the course of a couple of weeks. And I was not religious, I was not spiritual, and I wanted to basically to survive. I wanted to connect with them. And so I started this research, and I had already been looking at the UFO phenomenon and the psychic ability. So I started to say, okay, I want to meet the people that can help me develop this, so I can connect with them. So I took a flight and went to Stanford for the first Soul Foundation forum. I was in San Francisco, but I didn't see you there at the second symposium. And so yeah, things started happening that I'm still trying to uh, figure out. So talking to people like you, it's incredible. It's super helpful beyond the podcast, beyond the entertainment. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the elites have that figured out, that's why they
I know.
want to squander it for themselves. But, a lot of us experiencers want to be for the public. How can I help my community? How can I help my government? How can I help my universities? And how can I help NASA? you know. But yeah, it's difficult. We're gonna go through a time where, you know, it's non-acceptant to being a hero in your own town. You know, once the ice breaks on this, once we're willing to accept that, hey, some people are different, and that's okay. Once we get over that chest banging primitive stage, we might be able to explore each other in a very analytical, loving way, and maybe be like me and, you know, study your surroundings.
Yep, absolutely. Eric, thank you very much for your time again. It was a
Pleasure,
pleasure.
my friend. Anytime, anytime.
Thank you so much for watching. Something is Up is still at the very beginning, so every bit of support makes a huge difference in my ability to bring you more amazing stories and incredible guests. If you enjoyed this conversation and feel called to support the channel, I'd be super grateful if you could just click the like and subscribe buttons and share the video with anyone you think might enjoy. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next episode.